Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. Across from me is...
Oh, do I say it?
That's the hand gesture too.
David Broyles, also known as Dr. Pants.
Hi, Dr. Pants.
Hey.
So for those of you that don't know, I guess, who are you? Who's Dr. Pants?
Well, Dr. Pants is sort of a like stage name / band name that I started using in the very late 1990s because I don't know, I was tired of using my own. I'd been performing under my own name for, I don't know, 6 or 7 years at that point, but I was tired of that. And so I was looking for like some sort of, moniker I could operate under, whether it was just me or it was a whole band or it was, whatever. And so, that was what I came up with. And and so it's been just sort of, that's been the deal since then. Like there were a few years in the sort of early to mid aughts where like you could occasionally find me playing an acoustic gig just as David Broyles, but that I kind of put the kibosh on that after a while. and now especially, even if it is just me, I still bill it as Dr. Pants because now there's another guy named David Broyles in Oklahoma City who's also a musician and plays gigs under his name. Yes. And we've met, for a long time we just knew of each other because of Guitar Center. Like, because we would give them, they always ask you for your name, and then they're like, the one and so. I was like, no, that's the other guy. Yeah. But then we met in person. He came to a gig, and we actually did a couple gigs as David Broyles and David Broyles, which was kind of fun. But yeah, and so yeah, it's just Dr. Pants, and then I teach here at ACM, and I tell the students they can call me Dr. Pants, so a lot of them do, and and it's become a nickname in other contexts. Yeah. Also, so
sometimes just Pants.
Sometimes just Pants. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So where does the name Dr. Pants come from?
I'd say probably, I don't know. I was probably like halfway through college in the 90s, and sort of just that word pants just became just sort of an obsession, not only for me. And I mean, it's a long story. There were like some musicians I was playing with at various times, and we all really liked the word. And then so yeah, so I was just like, and then my original plan was just to have, like, I wanted to call my project just The Pants.
The Pants.
And like my first job out of college, I actually worked for this small record label that had an office in Santa Fe where I went to school, and it was one of those old Apple computers, and I just put in like text, like in a certain font, as my screensaver, and so I just had the word pants just coming up like as my screensaver. And one of the other guys who worked there, who was from New York, he walks in and he's just looked at the computer, and he's just like, oh yeah, there was this band back in New York called The Pants. And like,
dang it.
Yeah. And I mean, and I don't know if they were still active at the time, but I was like, no one shall have the same name as my project. And so anyway, I took Pants, and then I put Doctor in front of it because there's always been at least a little bit of a funk-informed element to some of what I do, and the Doctor reminded me of like Dr. Funkenstein, P-Funk, that kind of thing. And so that was kind of where it came from.
Yeah. So are you allowed to use the moniker Doctor without...
I think it's pretty clear to everybody that it's just a name. And
right.
I don't actually have a doctorate in anything. Yeah. I have self-imposed honorary doctorates
Yeah.
or one doctorate singular.
This guy in the Revolution, does he have
Oh yeah,
actually
Dr.
have a
Fink.
doctorate?
I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't know if Dr.
yeah.
Fink has a doctorate or not. That's a good question.
Yeah.
That was I got to meet him after they were here, and that was not one of the questions that occurred to me to ask.
Huh.
So
Well, I guess if anyone can get to him, find out. Okay, so how did you first start with music?
gosh, I mean, music was always a thing for me. Like even from in my early childhood, like I was the kid who, like at 3, 4 years old, was flipping through my parents' record collection and like handing things to my mom's, like, play this. What does this sound like? And
Yeah.
and so,
Real quick, what was one of those early records that you remember?
well, I mean, probably, I mean, there were a number of them that were impactful. I mean, probably if, the most impactful would be my parents had a copy of the Beatles. It was the 1962 to 1966 compilation, the one with the red border around it. And that was probably the most impactful thing out of all of them. But there were other, I mean, like Buddy Holly and singer-songwriter stuff from the 70s, like Carole King, James Taylor. And then, well, and I wasn't really, this was sort of like, and when my dad had this box of 45s from like his teenage years, it was all like, late 50s rock and roll stuff, Chuck Berry, Elvis and things like that. And like he would, at various points in our childhood, he would, like he'd make a mixtape of all the stuff from his 45s, and then we would like play that on like car trips, and like we'd play the thing until it wore out, and so he'd have to make another one, and like and so that was like literally like the first like mixtape like I ever remember was that had all my dad's 45s on. And then he had some other like random stuff in there. Like he had a 45 of American Pie where like the 9-minute song or whatever was split over the two sides. And so like for a long time, my knowledge of that song was like, oh, it fades out right here, and then it fades back in. Like it was and it was funny when I finally heard it all at once, all at the same time. I was like, oh, okay. This makes a little more sense. Anyway, so there was all that stuff. And then, I mean, I like in second or third grade was probably when I started listening to Top 40 radio, and that was the early 80s, and it was a long time ago, but it was actually a fairly interesting time to start to become aware of Top 40 radio. And then, and around that time, I started taking piano lessons also, took those for a few years, but then quit. I don't really know exactly why I quit. I had to switch teachers, and I don't think I liked my new teacher as well. And anyway,
it's not like any kid actually likes doing
right. Piano. I mean, I liked it probably more than your average kid, at least to a degree, but at the same time, there were things about it that, were getting in the way of my, whatever else that I wanted to do as a kid.
Sure.
And then in 8th grade, I picked up the guitar and started doing that. And it probably took like, I had experimented even as a grade schooler. Like I had experimented with writing like song lyrics. Like it was all terrible because I was a grade schooler, but it was, but I was engaged in the act to some degree. And then like I started playing guitar and like, probably started to at least attempt to write songs from the point where I could like string enough chords together to do it.
Sure. You only need like 2 or 3.
Right. Yeah. And, but then, and, I was still writing lyrics but there were a finite number of moments for a couple of years there where like the music part over here and the lyric part over here actually came together in some sort of recognizable whole. I probably, by the time I was probably 16 or so, So a couple years into high school, like I had actually managed to write like some actual songs, like some things where it's like, oh, I wrote music, I wrote lyrics. You know, some of them I even maybe wrote them sort of kind of to, you know, at the same time enough that
Right.
it really felt like something coherent. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and I mean, I started to do things like play in the high school talent show
Yeah.
and things like that. And then I joined my first band at the end of my junior year of high school. We did mostly covers.
What
Like,
was that terrible band name?
oh, it was a pretty bad band name. And I joined. Well, I joined them. They already had their name when I joined, and so they were called Section 16-4.
A lot of numbers.
Yeah, it was apparently like they needed a name, and they like looked down at somebody's like science textbook or something, and it
jeez.
said Section 16-4. And they're like, why not? Sounded vaguely, I don't know, sci-fi or some crap. But but it was a fun band to be in, and they were, you know, the other guys in the band actually did have some skill. Like we could have been way worse, you know, um, and we did mostly covers. I got them to play like a couple of my originals
Nice.
before, you know, 3 out of 4 of us graduated and it fell apart. You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, and there was that, and then when I was also when I was a senior for Christmas, I got my first like 4-track cassette recorder, and I had always dreamed of doing like when I had always dreamed of like, oh, I'd love to just, you know, record something and, you know, put together a little cassette of something, and when I got the 4-track, like I got the 4-track at Christmas, and by April, like I had recorded like a little, like, you know, 15-song cassette of like my original songs that I was making copies of and selling
Yeah.
to people for $5. And it would, I'm really on some level at that point, like once I had that in my hands and I was like, I've got this thing now that says I write songs and I play them.
Yeah.
And there was kind of no looking back after that. And, went to
Are those cassettes still around?
I have one copy of that particular cassette. I was just looking at it the other night, and there are a few people out there I think who still have them. I don't know. I'm sure a lot of people got rid of them, but yeah, there are probably a few that exist. I actually just for fun, because it was this year is the 25th anniversary of that first cassette. I put a sort of a reissue of it on my Bandcamp page, and I even like kind of trolled through my archives and found like some live performances and things of a few of those songs, and tacked some bonus tracks on the end of it. And
Cool.
So it's actually up. You can download it for $5 right now.
All right.
So
Cool.
anyway, but
Plug away.
yeah, but you know, hear my juvenilia, as it were. But yeah, and so that, I mean, I think that's the end of the story as far as like how I got started. Like because after that there was like, I don't think I ever considered not doing it anymore.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, so
Well, yeah, and that kind of leads to my next question. Like, what made you, or why did you decide to make music your career, or not a real job, or whatever?
Right.
People-
I think somewhere in there during the high school years, I think it just occurred to me that there was really nothing else that held that kind of interest or passion for me.
Yeah.
And I think I was just maybe, you know, naive or idealistic enough to be like, well, you know, I'm sure I'll figure it out, you know. And it's not that it's I mean, certainly hasn't been without its challenges. I mean, there were, you know, I mean, I worked a retail management job for years, and where like my wife and I, either for my stuff or her stuff, would, you know, just try and play gigs on the weekend, and you know, maybe do these tiny little road trips where we would go and play like one show and come back, and, you know, things like that. And I mean, we did that for years, and I think that and the whole sort of being married to someone who also sort of had the same kind of passion and attitude about it
Yeah.
probably helped also, because it was like, oh, okay, like this is like the one thing that I don't like. You're like the one person that I don't have to explain this to.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you know, and so yeah, I certainly there, you know, what I always thought was like I used to I heard stories in high school and college about like, oh, you know, my friend was a, you know, French horn player, but like he just totally burned out and quit. And I'm like, well, that's just like one music thing that you can do. Like there are a lot of other things. Like there's all, you know, and I think that when I was also lucky, I mean, I was lucky enough to go to an undergrad program that was like, no, you should actually learn how to do, you know, a bunch of different things and not just, you know, they were very much not of the conservatory mindset at all. And so I think that, and I don't know, I feel like I'm rambling, but it just never, it never occurred to me that there was, there was anything else worth pursuing in that way. I think there have definitely been times where there were definitely times, at least, in the past where, well, sure, I may consider like trying to get some sort of other day job that maybe is more stable or whatever. But like the idea of not doing music or not having the goal of like, you know, music being a significant part of my life in that way, like that was just never in play. And then I think that just the fact that I get to do what I do here at ACM, and, you know, the fact that basically, you know, what I do here is so strongly connected to that other thing. Like that's fantastic. I couldn't have asked for, you know, a better sort of, you know, day job in that, at least at this point, you know. So at least, you know, in terms of the satisfaction and the passion part of it.
Right. Yeah. Make a mental note of the teaching thing because I have questions for that. But
okay.
What was your undergrad in? And then, like,
my undergrad, I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Contemporary Music Performance.
Okay.
And it wasn't instrument specific. Like it was, and, you know, I have friends who got the exact same degree, but, you know, came out of there having sort of really sort of had a different focus than I did. Mm-hmm. You know, it was a relatively new program. It was newer. I think when I got there it was newer than ACM was when I started teaching here, and it had only been around for a couple years. And, you know, like I said, they encouraged a certain diversity of things that they wanted you to do, you know, but at the same time, you were also able to sort of like try and, you know, tailor your experience to what you were really interested in. And, you know, I was interested in songwriting. I was interested in composition. And so a lot of what I ended up doing sort of tended to skew that way, you know, whereas I have a friend, Marty Schwartz, who, you know, like I said, he graduated with the exact same degree I did, but he was just guitar all the time. Like he was a guitar player, like, and still is a guitar player. Like he makes, I think, a good chunk of his living through like YouTube tutorial guitar videos now. Sure. Like, and but also, you know, as you know, plays and does gigs and the whole thing. But like, it was one of those. It was kind of I think it was a little bit of a lightning in a bottle scenario being there during that time, because I don't know that people who went through the program later necessarily were able to sort of, you know, sculpt their experience in that way. But at the same time, the other thing about it was, it's like, okay, it was doing a degree like that was like, it was what you made of it. And the people who went in there and weren't like, you know, sort of super hyper aware of like the opportunity that they had happened upon, like they sort of burned out after a couple of years and like, I'm not really getting anything out of this. I'm like, you're not really putting anything into this, like, you know, but like, whatever. And so, so yes, it was at the College of Santa Fe in New Mexico, which is actually now a defunct institution.
Oh, man.
My college went out of business in 2009. And then they replaced a new company came in and established a school there called the Santa Fe University of Art and Design. And actually the music program continued on with some of the same faculty, but anyway, but then that school went out of business. And I think it was this past May, last month, the last class graduated, and now they're going to do something else with the campus. And there's not going to be a school there at all. And which is pretty weird, but it kind of makes it, I think makes me, I'm happy for a lot of reasons that I went and did a master's degree at UCO, but like, it feels good to kind of have like, well, I have another alma mater now. It's not just the one that went away and it doesn't exist.
I have a degree, it exists.
I have a degree, right? Yeah. I mean, it doesn't invalidate my degree, but still,
no, I know, but still telling people that.
Yeah, it's like I went to this place that it's not a thing anymore. That place.
So you kind of mentioned it a little bit, but like, so what is your primary instrument, if that even is like a thing?
I mean, my primary instrument is guitar, for lack of a better. I mean, it's certainly the instrument that I know best, and then I feel most comfortable on. I can, hack my way around on several other instruments, but like, but yeah, and I don't, but I'm always going to feel like, well, I'm a songwriter and composer whose primary instrument is guitar, as opposed to like, I'm a guitar player,
right.
Like,
yeah.
And it's not that, I mean, I've managed to accomplish things on the guitar that I'm relatively happy with a lot of the time, but it's not, but I don't live and breathe the guitar the way so many guitarists do.
Well, last week I had Ted Tamayo on.
Talk about living and breathing the guitar. Yeah, totally. Absolutely.
And I mean, in a weird way, like, thank you for that, because I also don't really have a primary instrument, and it's weird because you sort of get asked like, oh, what do you play? It's like, my primary instrument is songwriting, it's composition.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
well, yeah, like in grad school at UCO, they would be like, so what's your instrument? And I would be like, guitar, and they would be like, yeah. I would get some sideways glances, and Dr. White would be like, well, what style of guitar? Like classical, folk, jazz? I was like, a little of everything. Like, and also, because like, well, like Dr. McGrill, like you've been in lessons with him or whatever. I mean, he is a composer, but he is a pianist.
Oh yeah.
Like on a very real level. Like probably, it's to a degree more so maybe than I am a guitarist. Like I'm still I'm like I said, I do things on the guitar that I'm happy with a lot of the time, and not only composed and context, but improvised context also. But at the same time, I'm very aware of my limitations, and I'm that I have limitations. Whereas like Dr. McGrill, it's like, well, he can pretty much pick up and sight read just about anything. He may not. I don't know how much of an improviser he is, but he's got to be a little bit at least geared that way.
Sure.
From the composing standpoint. And so anyway, but yeah, I mean, I think. I'm glad that I'm at least as facile on the guitar as I am, and I'm glad that I have a good enough understanding of music theory that like I can apply that to different instrument contexts and things like that. It doesn't. I don't have to view it or experience it like specifically through the guitar in order to understand it.
Sure.
And so yeah.
So you recently got your master's in composition.
Yes.
What made you decide to go for that?
Well, I had actually been thinking. I mean, I had thought about a master's degree for. It always been somewhere in the back of my mind since I graduated with my bachelor's. Like, I think at the time when I finished my bachelor's, I was feeling a little like I had such a unique experience doing my bachelor's but I think I was spoiled to the point where I was like, well, if I can't have a similar experience doing my master's, then I just don't want to do it, and what I would get from, my professors would be like, well, there's this school and they would really like this part of what you do, but they wouldn't have any use for this part of what you do. And like at the time I was just like, well, screw them, and so I just didn't really try to go anywhere or do anything. But it always sort of gnawed at me. And I think that like at a certain point, whether I said it out loud to anybody or not, like I think I decided like, well, if I ever go back to school, I'll get a master's in composition. But I still wasn't sure like, well, where I would do that or what, like anything like that. And then I start teaching here. Oh, no, I can't remember what order. I met somebody who was a singer-songwriter, but had just gotten a master's in composition at NYU. And I was like, okay, you do this thing and you do this thing. So like, and I had a cool conversation with her and I was like, well, I couldn't write a fugue to save my life. Like, I don't, right. And she's like, oh, don't worry about any of that. Like, and she's like, do you have things that you wrote at least at one time, like, on paper for instruments like that? I was like, yeah. And she's like, they're just going to want, most places they'll just want to see a portfolio of some of the things that you've done. And it's not, she's like, as sort of, the traditional degrees go, or, things like that, it's like you're actually going to be, in some ways in less of a box than some of the, some of the other people pursuing masters and other parts of the discipline are. And so at that point, like I started to feel more optimistic about it. And then, I started teaching here. And then once a bunch of us went full time, it was like, oh, okay, if you have a master's, you'll get this much more money. And then you could go and get a master's from UCO and whatever. And like the tuition would be super cheap and this and that, whatever. And I was like, okay, well, it's hard to, it's hard to argue against it at this point. And so, really at the time, the only argument against it was that, we had one child, and she was, when I started grad school, she was, how old was she? Hang on. I started in the fall of she turned 2 right after I started grad school. And we didn't have a second child at that time, nor were we pregnant with one. But then we became pregnant with one, a few months after that. And so like at the end of my first year of grad school, our son was born, and there was a whole crazy set of circumstances surrounding that, basically kind of made, sort of like the month before, like the 2 months that he was born, he was born on May 5th. Yeah. So the month before that and the month after that were 2 of the most like insanely stressful and months of our entire lives. But all that to say that like, it seemed like a saner decision when before the second baby in the picture. And then after that, it was like, oh dear God. And, but I mean, I made it out, and I did it in 3 years, which, teaching full time and being married with 2 children and all that, I think that's not bad.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to be glad that I did it. Although like there are definitely parts of my life that like I'm still playing catch up on now, a year after I've finished. and it may be like that for a little while longer. I don't know. But yeah.
So how is the like composition stuff different from like the Dr. Pants stuff, or is there a difference, and do you try and make it all the same thing?
I mean, I think for me, it is all part of the same whole. Certainly because like in the time in my life where this thing that I decided to call Dr. Pants was sort of, started its life. Like that was, right after I had finished my bachelor's, and there was a part of me that was very much like, well, yes, I write, these rock songs, but I also, have written chamber music, or I've written, some of these, strange electronic pieces, or I've done this or that, whatever. And all things that some of those things are things that I ended up doing way better later on in, my master's degree or whatever, but a master's program. But I think there was always a part of me that was like, well, there's like, I do all these things, but all these things are part of the same, big thing. And I think that and that's in some ways a hard sort of tack to take, like, because I think most people looking in from the outside, whether they're musicians or not, like very much want to separate those things. It's like, oh, well, I mean, oh, well, your Dr. Pants thing over here, that's your, your pop stuff. And then over here you've got this. But like, I mean, I think that it would be disingenuous to not say that, like, at least there were small moments throughout, the stuff that I've released under the name Dr. Pants, where it's like, okay, but you can hear here that there's maybe a little bit more going on than, maybe is always happening in your average rock band or whatever. But I feel like it does kind of a disservice to my sort of creative mind to be like, well, what about this thing? It's like, well, I do this thing, right? Like, and at the same time, I say that, and I can't. I would be also dishonest to say that there weren't, big differences in approach, depending on what kind of thing that I'm working on. And like, even if it's still songwriting, like, there's a difference from like, okay, well, I'm kind of thinking this is, sort of, I have this song that I want to work on that's more like, it's probably more of an acoustic thing. It's a little bit more pure singer-songwriter in that aspect. Yeah. Whereas there's this thing over here where it's like, it's a song, but I'm very much thinking in terms of arranging it for a band as I'm writing it and that kind of thing. And then there's this thing over here where it's like, oh, I'm thinking about, I'm writing for, 4 to a half dozen monophonic instruments that are all playing together, and I have to think about how all that works. And but at the same time, that there's a freedom there that you don't necessarily have. It's like if you're writing for like guitar, bass, and drums or whatever, it's like ultimately there's not really a place where you can try real hard. Like there's a finite number of moments I can think of where it's like, oh, someone managed to do that and totally buck, traditional harmony. Like that's not a thing that's like, I was thinking about the song Jerry Was a Race Car Driver by Primus not too long ago. And I was thinking about how I think arguably that song still has a tonal center, but like it is really, really hard to peg that song down harmonically. But that's one of the only songs I can think of, like in sort of the pop world where that's the case. And so it's just, you just end up there are options that you kind of generally, and there are always exceptions, but like generally you don't have as much in certain areas, whereas like over here it's like I've got a woodwind quintet. It's like, oh, okay, I can seriously start to screw around with some stuff now. But like but yeah, I mean, at the same time, yeah. So on the one hand, yes, I feel like it's all part of the same whole. But on the other hand, like it would be dishonest of me to say like, and I approach it all the same way because
Right, yeah.
it's a ludicrous idea.
Right. But I did see the short opera that you put on, and I will say that like it sounded like Dr. Pants. Like
That's good. That's an interesting. Yeah, I think I don't know that. Well, Rory would have. Rory didn't ever say, "Oh, that sounds like Dr. Pants." So I guess that's. There are some people definitely who had heard it who, you know, also have heard my other work in that context. Like, I mean, But I like that it did sound like Dr. Pants, even though it was sung by people who have much more classically trained voices than me.
Sure.
And, whatever. But
like stylistically and all the content and stuff,
Yeah.
it felt like Dr. Pants.
yeah, that's good. I suppose. It was funny when I took on that project. I was like, I'm just gonna kind of write what I want to write. Like I think if I had been given that project maybe in grad school, like it probably would have turned out differently than it did outside that context. Because I was
Yeah.
like, well, I don't have to really worry about what Dr. McGurl's going to say or anything like that. I can just write the thing.
Yeah.
I probably took more of like a musical theater approach to it than maybe
Yeah.
a couple of those other guys did. Those other operas had like big time, like section, even for a 10-minute opera, long sections of like, recitative where like it was, I mean, there was obviously a prescribed melody that they were, or notes that they were singing, but it wasn't necessarily melodic. It was more like, we are talking, but we're singing the no, and
Yeah.
Whereas I was like, no, everything, I'll write it I'll write the libretto in a verse oriented fashion.
Exactly.
And then from there, like, since the words are written in a verse oriented fashion, then the songs will end up coming, or the parts will be, pieces of it will end up coming together in that way. And so, it didn't have any recitative in it at all. And it was all, just either like there was one, there was started with a duet and then an aria and then another duet and then another duet and then a trio at the end. I can't really remember, but it was, but yeah. And so yeah, it just, but I liked the way it turned out. And I was like, I don't in any way, wish that I had done it differently. And so yeah. And it for the first time felt like something that actually maybe kind of did sort of bridge those worlds a little bit. So,
going back to the teaching thing,
yes,
for a little bit. How is teaching music different or similar to making music?
I
acknowledge that these questions are hard.
No, that's fine. I don't really know how it's similar. Like maybe it's similar to making music in that like you just sort of keep at it and eventually you get better at it than you were when you started. Certainly, I mean, certainly my experiences making music definitely inform what I do as a teacher, but it's amazing how separate they can become.
Yeah.
Because I think that there have been a lot of moments, or there have been moments where I have realized like I could probably continue doing the teaching part for a really long time and sort of let sort of the creative making music part suffer or let go of it. And like, it probably wouldn't necessarily affect my ability to teach all that much. But but at the same, but that's obviously sort of not what you want to
Right.
happen. But but I think even, being here at ACM and, teaching in a contemporary music school where it's like we're concerned with, primarily various modes of popular music, like, and then, being in grad school for 3 years where I was doing hardly any of that at all and,
Yeah.
doing this other stuff over here, like there were moments where I felt like, well, I'm still teaching and I'm teaching fine. Like there's not really anything wrong with the teaching that I'm doing. But at the same time, like I, maybe didn't feel like as in touch with some of the direct subject matter because I wasn't as engaged in it. In outside of the classroom,
Right.
but yeah, so I don't know. I don't know that the act of teaching music and the act of making music, I don't know how alike they are, but at the same time, but it's, I guess, and and they can sort of exist independently of each other. But I think that maybe eventually, if you do, more of the teaching and less of the music making, like maybe eventually some sort of disconnect or maybe or quality issue starts to creep in. I don't know. I'd certainly, I'm sure there is, sure, other than just the general position that, it is good for people to continue to make things, like,
Yeah.
there's probably there's probably a reason why most universities and their various sort of arts departments, like they want their faculty members to be making things, like
Yeah.
not there. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, like, well, it helps make their university visible or helps them look, all that kind of thing. But I think there is probably more an inherent connection of like, well, because it probably makes you better in the classroom in some way also, whether we can quantify exactly what that is or not.
Exactly. And then last question on this vein before I switch gears.
Okay.
What advice do you have for young musicians? And it's hard out here for us.
Yeah. I mean, and there are, I think that it's funny because I think a lot about, probably more than I should, about things that I could have done differently as a younger musician, or ways that I could have worked harder, or all that kind of thing. Like as I came out of my undergrad into my early 20s and things like that. First of all, I want to acknowledge for you or for whoever else that that is a really hard time in your life. Like people are, I think it's just starting to be an accepted idea that like graduating from college can be a real downer. Despite the achievement of it, it's kind of like somebody's just, like the bus gets there and they just drop you off and you're like, what now? Like, and I think that, so as I say that, as I talk about, well, there are probably things that I could have done differently, I also feel as though it's important to acknowledge, I don't want to, I'm really bad about minimizing my own sort of like struggles and difficulties that I've gone through, whether it be emotionally or whatever. And so I feel like we should say, no, that can be a really hard time. And it is possible, no matter how much I want to reevaluate and look back on it, that maybe I did do the best that I could. But but I think that working hard is important. I think that knowing that, like, or at least sort of assuming or operating from the perspective of no one is going to hand you anything.
Yeah.
Like, that is probably a good way to try and operate. Somebody may hand you something at some point, but you certainly can't count on it. And
Yeah.
and I think that, I don't know if I maybe at some point for a while there did think I was going to get handed something, or I don't really know, but I know that at a certain point I realized that, like, the important part for me was just like, as long as I'm just regularly getting off my ass and doing something, whether it was, playing gigs or writing something or trying to, release some sort of project to, whatever degree of public indifference. Like, I was, but that was all, and all I knew and all I continue to know. And it's amazing how, like, I will forget the basic thing and come back to it. Like, for me, it's like, if there's music being made, I'm making it, I'm making new things, I'm doing that, whatever. Like, for whatever reason, that is ultimately the beginning and end of sort of my, not reason for doing it, but like that seems to be what my sort of psyche and everything responds best to. It's like, well, no, I'm doing the thing. So as long as I'm doing the thing, it's not necessarily about how people are responding to the thing, although you can't help but dwell on that sometimes. But I think that the other thing that occurred to me when you asked that question is that, and I don't know it super well, but the book Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke. I don't know if you're familiar with that book.
I'm not.
So that book, and my wife introduced me to that book, like, when we were dating, and it's basically Rainer Maria Rilke. Rainer Maria Rilke was a poet, and at some point, a younger aspiring poet started writing him letters and sending him his poetry for advice, criticism, all that.
Yeah.
And the book is, you never actually read any of the stuff that guy sent him.
Yeah.
The book is just a compilation of his letters that he wrote back to the poet. And the one part of it that I always remember is that, he's talking about he's like, you asked me if your poems are good, like, ultimately, like, that is not the important question. The important question is, that I think, he's like, that I think, and this is all paraphrase, but that I think every writer should ask themselves, and you can sort of extrapolate and say every, creatively driven person should ask themselves, he says, the question you should be asking yourself is, like, in your darkest, hour, in your quietest moments, like, must I write? And and if in those moments you find that the answer is yes, then then that is the only important thing. And I think, especially in a world where, and I'm sure this can probably lead into some other discussion of something else you want to talk about, but, like, especially in a world where, just things seem to be getting crazier every day. Like, to me, it's something I think I've always known, either consciously or unconsciously, is that, like, the only meaningful response for me personally to the human condition is to make things. Yeah. And I don't know what else to do. And I think that for young musicians, my advice is, like, you got to figure out if you're one of those people, because ultimately, like, there's going to be some point or multiple points in your life where, like, that is literally the only reason you have for doing it. Yeah. And if you don't have that reason there, then you will quit and it will be done. Like, and so I think that for me, it's like, okay, my advice is, okay, figure it out. Like, really go deep and be like, is this the thing that like I feel compelled to do beyond any other for whatever reason? And some people, it's the answer is going to be no, it's not. And, and that's okay. Sadly, there are probably some people who might even be, famous for making music in some capacity who like, that actually probably isn't the answer that they would give in those moments. But that, we live in a strange world, and there are a lot of things that don't make sense. And, my advice is like, you have to figure out, how to make sense of it for yourself, or how to make continuing to get up every day with the intention of making things, a priority for yourself in the face of, potential indifference, or lack of financial success, or whatever it is. Because there's just a lot of us that are just going to struggle with those problems just inevitably, just because of the way that our culture and our society approaches art and creativity at this point. And maybe some of that'll change eventually. I don't have any idea, but
Yeah.
I'm alive right now. We're alive right now. So we've got to figure out a way to make sense of it.
Yeah.
The way things are right now.
Given the way that time has gone with these questions, I might have to just like split the first podcast into 2 podcasts, and so that'll just be the second podcast.
Okay.
So I'll ask one more question, and that'll probably be like the end of the first podcast. So
Okay.
like, stay tuned till next
Sorry, I
week
can I can talk a lot, so
So the last question for this one, why is music important to have in the world?
Oh God, like I don't know. I mean, I go back and forth. There's a part of me that feels like, well, it is insolent on the part of musicians to feel like music is somehow, can be quantified as more important than any other form of art or creativity. I certainly feel like, well, it's, art and creativity are important to have in the world because they encourage, reflection. They, in terms of what, people think and feel, and they create community, not only in terms of like community around the act of creating, but also community in terms of, experiencing creative work and what that means in terms of people's ability to feel connected to other people. One of my professors in undergrad theorized that music was a basic human function. And it was a strange way to put it. And there are still days where I try and kind of like unpack like what exactly he meant by that. But contextually, what he would say, he's like, he would throw this out like after he had sort of played a recording of like, a pygmy tribe, who basically like on the audio recording had just done this improvised piece of music of just like these sort of funny vocalizations back and forth.
Yeah.
And so like the idea that like, no, it's something that's like wired into people, and I, on the one hand, like, I don't necessarily have a lot that I could say to dispute that idea. On the other hand, it's like, well, you can argue like, well, is it a basic human function when, there are, people in the population who don't have any real interest in engaging in it, or, I don't know, or maybe they're just, maybe they're only that way because something in their, life experience, sort of pushed them into that hole, I don't know, but I know that. And also for someone like me who is so like she lives and breathes the stuff. Like it's hard for me to be like, like anything I say is going to kind of carry the bias of like, well, of course it's important. Why would it's the only reason that I get up every day. Like it's not the only reason, but I mean, I think that I think that it clearly is. I mean, I think for me, it does tie into like the larger idea of like, creativity and art as a whole are important. But at the same time, there's probably something, but there's something unique about the experience of, our ears perceiving the movement of air molecules that connects to us in a way that maybe other art forms don't necessarily do, and so I guess the answer is, yes, it is important. I think that the why is probably still up for debate, but I've threw out a few possibilities there,
right. Thank you for doing this with me.
Sure.
This is it's been a long time coming.
Yes.
I've been asking you to do it for a while.
Well, no, and I'm glad I was finally able to be like, okay, and then after as sort of nearing the end of like sort of like the first school year without grad school in the mix, like I finally started to I had settled down. Things had settled down enough to where I was like, okay, let's look at like the short list of the things that like people have asked me to do in the last couple of years that I haven't been able to do. Okay, there's this. Oh yeah, and there's Santiago's podcast. Okay, let's see if we can make that work. And so yeah.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
This very. I mean, it's inspiring to me, but it's also like I'm grateful to have had you as a teacher.
Oh, well, thanks.
So for all of the plugging things at the end, where can we find you and your stuff?
Plugging things. Okay, so drpants.com, DOCTOR pants.com is the main website, but it does need some love right now. It's sort of in a state of non-currency, but I'm working on that. That's on the list also of the things that I've let go over the last few years that I'm going to fix up. Certainly, probably the Bandcamp, the Dr. Pants Bandcamp, so drpants.bandcamp.com has all the Dr. Pants recordings as well as recordings I've done under the name Weird Files, which is kind of another sort of aspect of my stuff. And then it's got the 1993 cassette on it right now, and so that's a good spot. And then, of course, I'm on all the social media: Facebook.com/drpantsmusic, Twitter @drpants, Instagram @drpants5, YouTube drpants5. Gonna try and do some more stuff there soon. I think that's all the major ones. Yeah. So I think that covers it. And then if we're plugging performances, Dr. Pants will be doing a full electric band show at the Root on June 30th.
Cool.
So yeah, there's that too.
Yeah. Quick-ish question. Well, actually, I had one quick question from the other end of the podcast. Cake or pie?
Cake or pie? Oh man. Push comes to shove, probably cake, but but pie's good too. I'm probably, I'm not a huge sweets guy. Like they're like sort of like the half dozen sweet things that I just really, really love. And my cake tastes are really simple. I love a yellow cake with like a vanilla or a buttercream icing, something like that.
Nice.
Pie, like I love an apple pie, like a la mode with vanilla ice cream. But I also like a pecan pie, key lime pie is very good. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, I like them both, but yeah, every year on my birthday, it's the yellow cake with the white vanilla frosting.
And then, a sort of pick your favorite child sort of question. What is your favorite Dr. Pants album right now?
Well, there's, it's kind of not fair, like, because I did the project called The Trip, which I released as like 4 separate EPs initially, but
Yeah.
then I compiled it onto this double album, and so that's definitely my favorite, because I feel like it's a really, like, especially when you put it all together, it's a very, very, it comprises sort of like all the things that I really tried or wanted Dr. Pants to be, if for the first however many years of its existence. But at the same time, it kind of feels like a cop out. Well, it's like, it's kind of like you were able to pick 4 releases, but but at the same time, I had all the songs were finished before I started the first EP, and there were things about it where we did do all at once. Like Dustin Ragland and I sat in his house for 2 days straight and literally tracked the drums to all 21 songs.
Dang.
And so so there were things about it where it's like, no, it really was sort of done as a whole, and all the production and engineering contexts were the same, and so it kind of, even though we would finish 5 or 6 songs, put them out, and then finish the next 5 or 6, put them out, like it was still kind of all one thing. And so I'm incredibly proud of that body of work, and part of getting back into sort of writing songs again has been getting past the idea that, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to top that. And so, but realizing that, like, okay, first of all, it doesn't matter, or you have to make it not matter on some level, but then also be like, okay, just don't put yourself in a box of thinking that, like, well, nothing I will ever do will be as good as blah, blah, blah. And so,
Sure. Listen to The Trip. Once again, I'm Santiago Ramones. Hand gesture.
Yes, and I'm Dr. Pants, David Broyles.
You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com.
Yep.
I make music. I have this podcast. You can listen to it on Apple Podcasts. You can listen to it on YouTube or on Stitcher. I don't know who listens on Stitcher, but you can.
I don't even know what Stitcher is.
It's a podcast platform.
Oh, there you go. All right.
Or you can listen to it straight from my website, and you can comment on all the things. You can leave reviews on all the things. You can find my music on my website. I have a demo that you can pay 0 money on or 100 monies on,
Right.
or whatever you want to do. Since I'm also in grad school, so I'm not putting out a whole lot right now, but I am performing a little bit. So this Friday, which from the context of this podcast will be tomorrow, I will be playing a set at Kendall's Bar with Tyler Sexton and Packing for Pluto. So I don't know what the order of that is, but that's so I'm doing something different.
Solid lineup, though.
Yeah. I'm using my laptop to play everything, and it's a little scary. But
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But yeah, so that should be fun. Join me on that if you feel like it. I always end my podcast with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails. It's going to be okay. I might be wrong.